Okay, today on the show, our guest is Kelly Carlson with Kelly Carlson Homes at Properties Christie's International Real Estate here in Chicago. Let's tell you more about Kelly. Now, Kelly Carlson is an award-winning broker with at Properties Christie's International Real Estate in their Western Springs office. That's a suburb of Chicago. Now, after launching her real estate career in the city in 2020, after 4+ years in consulting, Kelly was named Engel and Volker Chicago Rookie of the Year, and more recently recognized as a member, and this is such a big deal, of the National Association of Realtors 30 Under 30 class of 2023. Just to let people know what that is, every year the National Association of Realtors wants to find the agents who are in their 20s, who are doing really exceptional things in the industry and having exceptional success as well, and highlighting them. And she was one of the award winners this year. With a love of interior design, historical homes, and do it yourself updates, this career is the perfect blend of her passions and professional background. And she's no longer doing the consultant Monday to Thursday fly out and then back on the weekend. So she gets to stay here in Chicago more often. Please visit Kelly at her website, which is kellycarlsonhomes.com, and follow her on Instagram, Kelly Carlson Homes, Facebook as well. We will have links to both or all of her social media in our show notes. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, DJ. This is such a pinch me moment. When I was in the process of getting my license, I was binging all of your old episodes in 2020. So very cool, full circle moment to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have one of our listeners on the show, excited to chat. It's always fun when people find us or we find people. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. And you have done some really exceptional things. I am also curious. So I know you're a University of Illinois grad. Did you go straight into consulting right out of school? Was that kind of your path?
Yes. And it was kind of one of those, you get recruited in the fall of your senior year, and then started in October after graduating. So had a nice long summer vacation. And then it was really time to get to work.
And did you have that consultant's life where you were traveling to clients during the week, coming back on the weekends? Was that kind of how you started?
I was not every Monday through Thursday, but my particular consulting group did have a lot of special projects. So it took me to a lot of remote locations across the US. So I had great airline status at that point, and that is probably the one thing I miss.
Yeah, no more first class
Nope.
upgrades, right? My sister lost that as well. She's now with a startup. Prior to that, she wasn't a consultant, but she used to travel for different jobs, and now she's lost all of that. And she
uh,
still occasionally gets an upgrade, but it is we laugh and go, "Oh, great, you're just like the rest of us now," which we
Such
love.
a bummer.
Uh, so why the switch from consulting to? Very few people, I think, get out of consulting because it is such a really, it's a wonderful career and track. It really truly is. It's not, of course, the travel stinks, but ultimately a lot of people stay in it. So I'm curious, what was why did you get out and why real estate?
Sure. Well, this story kind of goes back to, I want to say high school, college, because I had always had a love for architecture, homes. I took every CAD class at my high school, went to a pre-architecture camp at U of I. And ultimately, when I was kind of in that phase of applying to schools, it was still end of recession. Residential architecture was not necessarily the place to find a job at the time. So I thought, well, I like math and science. I'll do civil engineering, which is a complementary field to architecture. And so did that at U of I. Great kind of versatile degree. I knew I didn't want to do traditional design engineering. And so I started looking into consulting, which is a route that a lot of engineering graduates go into. So that seemed to be a nice, mix of getting to work with people, client services, but also relevant to my degree. And so, yeah, I did that for 4 years, starting at a big four firm and then moved on to a smaller boutique management consulting firm. I could not think of a better place to launch my career. It really taught me the value of exceptional client service and how to be professional,
Yes.
how to manage a very demanding schedule and still meet deadlines. But it got to a point where I'd been at two firms. I didn't see myself in it for the long haul and didn't think that going to another company was going to, solve what I felt like was missing. And so it kind of brought me back to that place of, I've always loved real estate architecture. That is just always fascinated me. And the voice in my head previously had always been, but you went to school for engineering and you're a consultant and this is what you do. But I started to think about it differently in terms of how could I leverage this experience in the corporate world to differentiate myself as somebody, I didn't have a sales background, but I had a lot of transferable skills for a totally services business. And so I did it. I quit my job in October of 2020, got my license, and got hit the ground running in January of 2021.
Right smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. How
Yes,
fun.
perfect timing.
That is incredible. And then for you to have enough success to catch the eye of the National Association of Realtors for their 30 under 30 is quite a big deal. I know many people, friends of mine, who have not made that list and have tried many times. A lot of my friends have made the list as well. But boy, it's a big feather in your cap. So congratulations. I'm excited to learn more about maybe what they see in you as well. And I think civil engineering too is a really nice transferable skill. And I know again that wasn't really your career, but it was your field of study and interest because civil engineers, people don't really know what that is. Just as one thing that civil engineers do is they're really good at visualizing, so they can see like 2 points of land and they can visualize a bridge across, or like if there's a river in between or something, they can visualize things that aren't there, and then they can bring those things to life. So I imagine even just that skill, along with your architecture knowledge and love of homes and interior design, probably is pretty helpful when you're maybe walking a client through a home, saying, you can probably see things that maybe I wouldn't be able to see, for example. I'm just curious if that ever comes up where, or maybe it's a renovation, you're able to maybe visualize that more effectively than, somebody without those skills.
Yes, that has definitely been helpful on the renovation front. The home that I'm sitting in right now, is actually the home that my husband and I just bought and did not look like this a few months ago. And there was a lot of work to get it to this place. And so something I was able to do for myself, but then also for my clients who are maybe struggling in the current low inventory market, not able to find that move-in ready home, or they've got to kind of grow into it, knowing what is in place and what can be done over time.
Yeah. It's funny, if you're watching this, you'll see, you're probably listening, so you won't see this, but Kelly has an all white kitchen. I also, although you won't see this on mine because I'm at the office, but I have an all white kitchen. And we were talking, sort of laughing about that earlier. And I just, I have all white, everything, white walls, white, I'm like really all white, white and black. And I'm thinking like it'll be funny in like 10 years when people are like, why were people doing all white? Like what, like it's cool now, but it won't be cool forever. So it is kind of funny how styles evolve and change over time. But let's talk about how you built your business, because yes, I think the consulting background, every consultant I know in the big four, professionalism, hard work, meeting deadlines, and just being of service. You talked about customer service are really sort of the main pillars, and being a good listener. I think consultants are great listeners as well. But those are really important skills that obviously transfer over into real estate. But you still had to build your business. People saw you as a consultant. That was your profession, a very well respected profession. And then that was your path. And then all of a sudden you're pivoting. Was it challenging to introduce your sphere of influence to your new career, or what was that process like?
Sure. So as after I got licensed, I started interviewing at different brokerages and met Jennifer Ames, who is a top producing Chicago agent, also the licensed partner of Engel and Volker Chicago in Lincoln Park. And her and I connected, and she had had a previous career prior to real estate as well. And so once I did get my license, I was so excited to come over to her company. And, you know, unlike a lot of new agents, they start out on a team and they learn from that team member and they help out. And it's a great way to get experience. But the unique thing about Angle and Volkers at the time is they're a boutique firm. And Jenny had told me, she's, if you come over, you can be a solo agent and we will help you. We will give you those tools. And so that was something that, I was so grateful for her mentorship and being able to get started as a solo agent. But under, having the experience of getting to cover open houses. And that was a huge part of building my business outside of, making sure, and this was a big thing that I had been taught, is don't be a secret agent. Like, make sure that your sphere of influence knows, that you are in real estate and this is a full-time serious career for you. So I think I took advantage of, social media and a newsletter and just connecting with people. I now had more time to be able to call up friends and people I knew from college to go grab coffee because I wasn't traveling. And so it was kind of a mix of just offering up all of my weekends to do open houses for any agents in our office, and then working with, friends and friends of friends. Over time, I'd say that first year was a lot more friends and family open house buyers. And then over time, it kind of, I think, I had done a good job with those friends that they felt comfortable referring me to their friends and family. So over time, it's become more referral based. But I'd say, if you're a new agent, like, don't be afraid to let your people know that this is your career.
And letting, you talked about open houses. I feel like agents don't do, newer agents may not know, depending on what firm they're at or who their circle is, that they know of other agents. But if you work in an office where there are agents with listings, not, there are small firms with just a couple of brokers, so this might not apply to everyone. But if there is someone in your office with at least one listing, I would go and ask, beg, plead, and do anything you can to get in their good graces if you're a brand new agent to sit in open house. Can you tell us? That's my suggestion. What would you recommend? Do you agree, or what has your been experience with open houses?
100%. My first buyer client was from the first open house that I held, and that's not how it goes every time. There are going to be times where you sit in an empty condo for 2 hours and, scroll your phone or check emails. But other times you might connect really well with somebody. And I'd say, just, asking questions, trying to get to know a person, see what information you can learn about them, because then when you are following up, you aren't going to be like that 12th agent who is sending them the same email saying, do you want to buy this condo, or do you want to, work with me on something else? I think trying to create some kind of personal connection is can make a difference. And that was the case with my first buyer client. They were so impressed by how much I remembered from our 5-minute conversation. So it goes back to that listening, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, and something to consider. So the first step, of course, is getting an open house when you don't have a listing, which beg the people in your firm to help you do that. And then when you have people walking through the open house, Kelly, what I heard from you is pay very, very close attention to what they tell you, and maybe even take notes after they leave. Because, and I was thinking about this as you were saying, I was like, why would you be the eighth person that maybe 8 other realtors might be? And I go, oh, because they're going to other open houses. It's like, it just occurred to me, oh yeah, of course they are. And so of course they're going to get 8 follow-up messages from, thanks for coming to my open house. And if you can add in, whatever the conversation was, yeah, all of a sudden now you stand above everyone else.
Definitely.
Really,
but it's a win-win for the listing agents too, because yeah, like you said, they've got maybe multiple listings and they can't be in 2 places at once. So it never hurts to ask.
it doesn't hurt to ask. And also in many cases, it really makes the seller look good to makes the selling agent look good to the seller, or the
Totally.
listing agent, I should say, because technically the selling agent's the one who buys them. Anyway, I don't know why we do it that way. It's too confusing.
I
Let's just
know.
say buy
I agree
side
with
and
you.
sell side. full yeah, but anyway, I don't make the rules. So sorry for the confusion there, but yeah, for anyone who is a listing agent, we know that oftentimes by asking a listing agent, hey, can I sit an open house for your property, they get to then say to the seller, hey, we're going to do an open house. And of course, that just makes the seller think that the listing agent's doing stuff. And that's a good thing too. So it really is a win-win for everybody. Obviously for the agent sitting the open house, if nobody shows up, and that is always a bummer, but it happens. But the important thing is these are where people do come into open houses. And I know that we live in so much of a virtual world now, but I really encourage everyone, if you're not slammed with appointments these days, I would be asking every listing agent I knew in my office, can I please come sit in open house? And okay, cool. So let's talk. I want to talk about social media because I'm 47 and I used to feel like I was a young guy. I'm not a young guy anymore. But I would, social media, is just kind of a different animal for people who are, in your case, you're like about 20 years younger. Tell us a little bit about how you've built your business on social. I'm just curious on what's worked for you. How do you think about content? How are you how are you posting? Tell us about that.
Sure. Initially I had thought, you have to be on every single platform and just, reach everybody from every direction. And I've started to learn that I think age is a big part of figuring out where your demographic is. And for me at 29, I'd say most of my sphere and people my age are still on Instagram. Facebook, not so much. TikTok, I don't have. I probably should, but I just am afraid I'd get too addicted. But that's been kind of the biggest social media piece for me. I have a business account, but I like to mix in still some personal with that. You will probably never see me post a just listed or just sold post.
Wait,
I
no, hold
think
on. Why is that? Why do you not post those?
because I my kind of thought process as I'm deciding, to put together some form of content, my question is this adding value to the consumer? And when I saw those and when I see them, it kind of just, it doesn't do much for me. However, if I see, a picture of a couple in front of a house and there's a story behind it, I'm interested, and it gives me more of the taste of, who that agent is and how they work. And so I love, on occasion to share client stories in that way. And yes, sure, it's showing that you are, selling homes and, you're successful and all that, but it's not so in your face. So I think it goes back to is it something that is adding value? As we are fixing up a 1920s Tudor, I have been sharing some of our renovation journey, because I personally love seeing before and afters. I think that's content people generally enjoy. And what it's kind of evolved into is going back to kind of helping people see what they can do with a space. And also, doing things depending on what your budget is. Here's places to splurge, here's places to save. So I found that to be kind of complementary with, um, you know, posting normal real estate stuff too. But I don't have a great, like calendar or anything of what I do. I just, when I have the time, I, will come up with an idea and post away.
I think that's really great advice. I'm not a fan of the just listed, just sold stuff either. I think it's perfectly okay to do. It doesn't do much for me. It doesn't necessarily turn me off when I see it, but it doesn't light me up either. Like when I see somebody do it, I'm sort of not a good example because I see all my friends having success, and I'm very excited to see them when they get their just listed, just sold. But if I was just a consumer, not in this industry, I'd be like, I don't. I mean, it'd be like the equivalent of somebody saying, I just got this big sale at the company I work at, and I closed this big deal. It's like we don't do that really. We might tell our friends and family I just closed this big deal, but we don't
Right.
necessarily broadcast it. But realtors do broadcast it, and that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it shouldn't I don't think it should be the primary. I don't think anyone would say that should be the primary driver for what your content is. I think people, you're right, are more interested in the story. They're more interested in learning about you and kind of what you're into. And also, if you want to see really cool DIY before and afters, I encourage everybody go to Reddit and subscribe to the DIY subreddit. It is awesome. And there's like, I think there's millions of people subscribed to it. And you get to see all sorts of projects in there. And there's the reason why millions of people are in there. Not everyone's a DIYer that's in there, but they just love lurking and seeing. So if you are somebody who does projects, check out the DIY subreddit, whether it's a home renovation or just something outside of real estate. You could document a lot of that stuff, put it in social, and it just shows people that you have passion and interest and that you're kind of doing cool stuff. So I am a big believer in that as well. So that's interesting. So you're an Instagrammer more than anything. TikTok's not your thing. I stay away from TikTok. I post our videos there, but I don't browse TikTok for the exact reason you mentioned. Is I have way too much of an addictive personality, and I would get lost in it, and hours would go away. So, but whatever social media platform that I think somebody is on is probably the one that they like the most is probably the one where they should spend the most time. But let's talk about so you had this great apprenticeship, sort of mentorship with one of the top producers here in Chicago, and then you had to make a transition because you and your husband just bought this place out in the western suburbs. You are not all that close to the city as you used to be. Used to be right in the city. And what was that a bit of a transition as well for your business? Was the majority of your business in the city prior, and how has that shifted as you've moved out west?
Sure. It's interesting because at my age, late 20s, a lot of my clients, I think COVID kind of sped this up, were moving out of the city maybe earlier than they would have in the past. And so I, having grown up in the western suburbs, Clarendon Hills, I already had a pretty good knowledge of many of the western suburbs. So I was able to help several buyers and some sellers out that way. So for a good portion of my time in the city, I was splitting my time a bit between western suburbs and the city. So I'd say the transition it hasn't felt, crazy, but I am now in a very, hyper local market where most of the agents who do the business here live in town. And part of that I started to learn very quickly is how many of the deals are happening off market. They don't even hit the private market. They are happening, just because there's word of mouth in town. And so it kind of got me thinking that I would want to find a more local brokerage. I had such an amazing experience at Engel and Volkers and have nothing but amazing things to say about Jenny and the whole team. But I quickly realized that, being kind of the new girl in town and being with a brokerage that had a very strong local presence would be an important piece for establishing myself here long term. So I'm still trying to figure it out. It's still somewhat new. But I've got a really great business plan for 2024. And Trisha Roberto is the managing broker for at Properties Hinsdale and Western Springs. And she's been so wonderful at getting me ready for this next year.
So yeah, let's talk about this next year. So what's on the marketing plan? I am always interested on, and again, I know you talked about with social media, you don't necessarily have a training calendar, or sorry, not a content calendar. But I'm curious on what kind of marketing efforts you plan to do to find additional buyers and sellers in 2024.
Absolutely. So my kind of big marketing campaign for 2024, I'm calling it Going West, buying your first home in the western suburbs. So, there's a lot of, Chicago residents, their homeowner, maybe they own their condo or they're renting. They're ready for that move to the suburbs, but they're maybe not from the area. And so they don't have that knowledge of, if schools are important, where, how to navigate that, commuting to downtown, if they're still going to work in the city, how to make that as easy of a transition as possible. What are the things they like to do in the city that they can still find some version of out this way? And so my focus is going to be helping with those first time suburban buyers. And that'll be, through kind of educational content on Instagram featuring different suburbs, local businesses, et cetera. But then also something I've started implementing is suburb tours where I will take a client out privately for a couple of hours and we'll tour maybe, 5 or 6 suburbs. We'll drive around. I will share, kind of my take on how that local market is, things that are notable about that town. And I think it's a great way to get to know somebody before you start looking at homes. But it's also, I think, a better way to get somebody out here versus maybe trying to drag them to a happy hour at, a downtown bar in Western Springs. So that's a big part of me. And in addition to kind of my typical, newsletter, I like to do quarterly client events at boutique fitness studios or maybe a fun local happy hour spot, things like that.
You just said something that really sort of piqued my interest because I was trying to think as you were saying it. I was like, we've done over 500 episodes. Has anyone ever said this before? And I don't think anyone has. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned about these tours. I think
Sure.
this is a brilliant idea, and we we did not I did not know you were going to talk about this. So I'm so excited because now I just got to collect my thoughts because here's what I was thinking. I've never heard of anybody doing this. So typically, you work with a realtor when you're ready to buy. You already know approximately where, the city, maybe even the subdivision if you're out in the suburbs or the neighborhood if you're in the city, whatever. You have a general idea. And we all hate when we get those buyers who call in and they go, I'm open to anything. And you're like, oh, now we got to figure this out. But what I love about what you're doing is you're helping people make a decision of where they want to live, not the home itself, which you'll do as step 2. Step 1 is probably the most challenging of the steps is where should we live, and people normally go on that journey themselves. They do not usually have a guide with them. Yeah, maybe they're watching YouTube videos learning about different suburbs, but they're not necessarily even being driven around to different suburbs going, well, here's some cool things about this one, and here's some, maybe not so cool things, and here's this suburb. And I mean that in Chicago, we have, God, I don't know how many suburbs, like probably more than 50 altogether, or villages and suburbs. So it can be really, I've lived here 21 years and I still don't really understand the suburbs. And so that would be incredibly helpful for me if I was going to move out in the suburbs. And I'm in this industry and I don't know anything about the suburbs. And so that is such an important thing. Is really here's what I heard you do. You thought about what the need is. What is the need? Well, people who live in the city, a lot of them move out to the suburbs because they want to start a family, get more space, whatever, lots of reasons. People typically move from urban to rural. And so, great. So Kelly knows this happens. That's where you grew up as well. And she thought, well, what's one of the challenges of that? Well, picking a place, picking an area to live, to move in. And there's so many different options. So I'm going to do these tours. I am so impressed with that because that is an incredible service to provide. And absolutely, I would be thrilled if I was living in Chicago and I was like, well, I got to move out to the suburbs. I need more space. And then I have to go, oh, now I got to figure out, I got to look at all these suburbs. That is a huge thing. And so for you to take somebody around, or take a group of people around for a few hours, amazing. I can't imagine, I've never heard of anyone else doing that. I'm sure other people do, but it's got to be, is that like a unique thing that you came up with?
Yeah, I was really struggling to brainstorm, how do I get that type of person? They're not going to take the train out here to come to an event of mine, but I think, like you said, just kind of what is that need and how can I fill that? And sure, you are spending upfront, kind of a lot of time upfront with a person, but I think when you invest in somebody like that, they're more likely to want to invest in you. And it also, I think, can save some time on the back end because you aren't spinning your wheels touring 10 different areas because they have no idea what they want.
Yeah. And if you even if you video some of it and not necessarily videoing the client that you're taking out, but if you take some quick little shots, you can then put those together and create clips of like, hey, we I did a tour today. We toured these 4 suburbs. We showed we showed them the downtowns and the schools, whatever, and you could actually make that into content as well. And I would think that's a tremendous value that an agent can provide is this idea of being the gateway to the actual house. I think is devalued a little bit right now because we have the ability as consumers to find properties on our own. We really don't need a realtor for that. It's good realtors are worth their weight in gold, but I think it's for a lot of stuff like what you're talking about. I think it's really like, hey, could you help me figure out where I should live? Like that's value. Anyone can search Zillow and find a property. So I love the fact that you do that. I'm sort of stepping on this point a little bit because I want our agents to know like this is the way you should think about it is what are the needs that my clients have? What is something that maybe is a decision that they're going to have to make that's a challenging one? And how can I make it easier for them before they even know that they want to use me? Because before you buy a home, you got to figure out what area you're at. So you're actually doing a step before they're even thinking necessarily about calling a realtor. So I really want to give you kudos to that because that is really an impressive thing. Um, Let's talk about when the market is slower. So, right now, the market is slower. Interest rates are higher than anyone would like. Inventory is down. What are you doing to stay busy? Because, and also, by the way, majority of your friends probably aren't moving out to the or I don't know. A majority of your city friends are probably still in the city, and maybe they're renting, maybe they're buying. But I imagine, not a lot of 29-year-olds are probably purchasing right now. So, your peers. So, what are you doing to sort of stay active, stay busy in a down market?
Sure. And one thing I do want to clarify is that even though I live in the western suburbs now, I'm still working on my city business too. I'm sure that might change over time, but I think especially with having app properties be all over the city, I've got access to the River North office and the Western Springs one.
Yes.
Um, so I'm still keeping somewhat busy with that, but it is a down market. Things are slower, and I think it's easy for agents to immediately freak out, and my brain has gone to those places too. But I really have tried to think of it as an opportunity of, this is the gift of time that I don't have in the spring market when I'm running around with like a chicken with their head cut off, no time to breathe. And all those projects that I wanted to do, I now have the time to. So an easy one for this time of year is, if you're not sending out a holiday card, you absolutely have the time. Whether it's handwritten or it's a cool, personalized postcard, I'd say spending the time and truly writing a nice note to your clients, your vendor partners, friends, family, etc. So that's something I'm working on these next couple of weeks. Um, but on top of that, I think just keeping up with my CRM, and I live and breathe by that. So that is my reminder system for reaching out to everybody from past clients, and just checking in and seeing how people are doing, inviting people to go get coffee and lunches. Again, it's the stuff that I didn't have the time for that I am doing now, in addition to just really fine tuning that business plan for next year.
Yeah,
Going
let's
to
let
broker tours too. Go
yes,
see
broker
what's out
opens.
there. This is the
Yes.
time to do it. Yeah.
Agreed. And the reason why people should go to broker opens, there's a lot of reasons. One is to learn inventory in the area, but also is to build relationships. We are human apes, and we like connection. We're interpersonally wired. So we're wired for connection. We're wired for also familiarity. So if you are going to broker opens, if you're participating in the industry, if you're making friends, if you're going to events and doing association stuff. You are just going to meet a lot of other agents. And guess what happens when they receive an offer for one of their listings from your buyer and they see your name? They're like, oh, I know Kelly. Kelly's awesome. Does that influence maybe their decision? Well, in a perfect world, it wouldn't, but does it? Of course it does. Of course it does. So you want to make as many relationships as you can with other realtors. Obviously, you want to play nice in the sandbox. It is a cooperative commission, but let's remember that these are little ways that you can give yourself a slight psychological advantage. You want, when somebody sees your offer coming through, you want them to be like, "Oh my God, I love Kelly. I'm so glad her buyer wants to buy this." Right? That's the reaction you want from the listing agent. And I think not enough is really said about that. And yes, obviously, the listing agent wants to do the very best for their seller, but it definitely doesn't hurt to see a familiar face from that buyer's agent. So, guys, really great suggestion there. Go to the broker opens, go to the open houses, go to the events, make friends. It might just help you win a deal that you don't know is going to happen in the future. Especially if maybe you come in at the exact same price and conditions as some other agent, and they go, "Well, I don't know the other agent. I know Kelly." Right? So that might be just what ends up winning you the deal. So really great suggestion. Really great suggestion there. I also wanted to, you had mentioned you do newsletters and you do sometimes. Oh, I want to talk about your CRM. So I know what I wanted to ask. I want to drill down just a little bit because pretty much every brokerage has, or at least most brokerages offer a CRM, or you can go out and purchase one on your own. How does your CRM tell you what to do? In other words, do you have it set up so that every one of your prospects or clients gets you get a reminder to call them on a certain day, or email, text? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, so I've worked with a few different CRMs over the years, paid for one, had one at E&V, and now I've got one at App Properties. And I think the what makes the most sense to me is, first you categorize your different groups of people into maybe, your A, B, and C. And so those A's are, I'm getting a reminder at least monthly to reach out to them. If it's, a new open house lead or new buyer referral, et cetera, they are getting much more frequent reminders. Like that's at least, a couple times a week during that first month or so after the introduction. But then I've got, my B and C's who I maybe will work with, maybe not. Everybody is on my newsletter, so everybody will get that monthly. But those, B and C's, I'm getting reminders quarterly to reach out to them. So I think spending the time, and it does take some time to organize your CRM in that way, I think has saved me so much time nowadays because I'm not going through everyone individually and saying, I don't really need to reach out to that person. The system just does it for me. So it's
So,
helped me
so
prioritize the big ones. Yeah.
Yes, you categorize, you put each one into a particular group, A, B, C, etc., and then you have a particular number of touches that you wish to do over the course of a certain period of time, a year, whatever. And so every day you wake up and you have a list of to-dos that's kind of automatically generated for you to keep you on track. Is that my understanding?
Yes. And yeah, so I don't have it like sending out emails for me.
Right.
I don't I don't like the automated stuff, but so it just I can decide then if I want to text the person or call them depending on the relationship, or if I saw something on their social media recently that I want to congratulate them on. But
Yeah.
it's just a reminder to have some kind of touch point.
Yeah, do something with so and so. And whether it's comment on a social media post, pick up the phone and call them, write them a note, text them, whatever it is, almost doesn't matter. Just that you're doing something that lets them know that you're thinking about them in some way. And, as simple as this is, I think the vast majority of agents don't set up their systems this way, where you don't really want to wake up every morning and go, what should I do today? That's just too much to handle. It's too much to try to figure out as a realtor. You got too many responsibilities. There's too many just options. What you really want is somebody to hand you, virtually a little thing that says, these are the 10 people you have to reach out to today. And then you go, okay, I just have to do that. And it just chunking your life into, that's what a CRM for me is just can make life a lot easier for. It just says all you got to do today is deal with these 10, 15 things. And then you never have to worry about losing touch with somebody. You don't have to go, oh, when's the last time I called so and so? Because unless you fell behind on your CRM tasks, you will know exactly when the last time you chatted with that person and how that worked. And again, this is all kind of like customer service slash marketing 101, but it is also something that's easy to forget to do. I call these like the push-ups of real estate. It's like, it's really hard. It's hard to do it, but it's a really good idea and it's super simple, right? So it's super simple to pick up the phone and go, hey, I was thinking about you. How you doing? I am on a couple of realtor friends of mine. A couple of, I must be on a few of their CRMs. I get a call from a friend every single month. He calls me and it's the sweetest. And I'm never going to be a client of his. I'm a realtor as well. He calls me once a month and goes, we're not, uh, I won't mention his name, but we don't go out socially. I mean, we have before, but we're not that close. Every single month he calls me and he's like, I was just thinking about you. And I'm sure it showed up on a CRM. It said, call DJ today. But you know what? It makes me feel special. It really is a nice thing. And he's a sweetheart for doing it because I'm never going to be his client, but he's still putting me through that system. And boy, I got the call last night from him. And I was like, God, I love that you do this, even though it's not going to benefit you directly in your business. You're just a good dude for doing it. And I'll tell you, people know that stuff. So if you can just be somebody who's, a lot of my people service professionals in my life don't contact me outside of business stuff, and I think it's a great idea. If you don't have a CRM, as Kelly said, now's the time to sort of put that together. You're not as busy right now. Now's the time. Kelly, what other suggestions would you have for somebody who's in their 20s, who got or 30s, or it doesn't matter, the age doesn't matter, newer to the business, and going, oh my gosh, this is such a hard market. Like, what would you recommend if you had to start all over today, and you knowing what you know now, what might you suggest? Open houses we talked about, organizing your sphere of influence. Are you putting everybody you know in your in your database? Is it like, hey, even the dry cleaner who knows my name, am I putting those people in? Like, how detailed do you get with yours?
I probably should be better at adding everybody under the sun. I know everybody in it, so I have scrubbed it at one point, and I didn't know a number of emails that like what, that's just taking up room and space. So I'd say I know of at least every person in there. But I probably should get better at just adding in, because it's so easy to add somebody to a newsletter drip campaign. If they unsubscribe, they unsubscribe, and that's okay. But you never know. They might read something that resonates with them. And that's, happened a few times where I've not even known that person was subscribed, and they replied, I love your newsletter, blah, blah, blah. I have a question for you. So I think leaving those opportunities open is a good reason to have them in your CRM for sure.
And if you didn't have a big sphere of influence and you're a newer realtor, how might you expand that? How might you start to add people to your database? What would you suggest to a new agent?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say obviously open houses, kind of keep going back to that, but I mean, you got to be diligent. And after that, you might get a list of names and sit down and organize them nicely into your CRM. That's been a great way for me to build my CRM over time. Sorry, I hope you can't hear my dog in the background
It's
right now.
okay. It's
Okay.
okay.
And but also getting involved in various organizations. So maybe join an intramural league, or whatever it is. Get involved in your condos, one of their committees. And I think it's a great way. You're getting to know these people, so you're not like spamming and stealing their email addresses. But opportunities where you are getting to meet a lot of new people, and there's a way to contact them. You have their information. I see no problem with adding them, and that's a good way to build your CRM as well.
Yeah, I always love what Brian Buffini had said, that he goes, if you really want to be successful as an agent and you're newer, he goes, meet 2 to 5 people every single day, which is not an easy task. But if you can meet 2 to 5 people a day, be like, oh, by the way, I'm a realtor. Oh, you know what? If you give me your email, I'll stay in touch with you or something. If that's all you did, and you just met 2 people a day, and you did that, let's just say 200 days out of the year, so that's adding 400 people to your database. within a couple of years, you're going to be flush with business.
Absolutely. And yeah, and for those that are building and it's a smaller pool, like really cultivate that and make those people feel, important and connected and taking, good care of that small group of people. They'll naturally want to, introduce you to their friends and family. So I think it kind of goes back to adding value to the consumer. Yeah.
Have you run into ever any issues where, and again, you're a younger person, you have a youthful look as well. So curious if that's ever been a challenge for you as you've been growing your business. Is it's like, oh, you look so young, maybe too young to be a realtor. I'm not suggesting you look so young, too young to be a realtor, but has that ever come up and is that ever a hurdle that you've had to work with?
Oh, I get that all the time still. I'm sure when I'm a little bit older, I will appreciate it, but it is a challenge when you're a younger agent and you are competing against very established brokers who've been doing this for 20 plus years. So I'd say the first thing is being willing to learn. So if you don't have that listing yet, like offer to help and learn every aspect of the listing process and the buying process. And once you have um, data that you can provide the experience, I think that is what speaks for itself. Obviously doing the research if you are up for a listing and really, getting into the data and really proving yourself that way, I think that can be helpful. But I think experience is a big part of it, and it's hard to get that experience when you are young. So I really think the best way is just offering to help, even if it's you're getting paid, $25 to cover a showing or $50 for an inspection or whatever it is. It'll just make you more confident when you are in the moment with a client. But it can also, I think, help to demonstrate, your value and your experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just do as much as you can. Do as much activity as you can. Don't worry about getting paid as much
Yes.
as get experience. Really a great place to wrap up. I also want to remind all of our listeners, if you have clients or you have friends that live in the city of Chicago or the suburbs, but specifically if they're in the city and thinking about making that move to the suburbs, but maybe you don't work the suburbs, or maybe you're not an agent in Chicago, maybe you're an agent somewhere else, but you're one of our listeners. Would be a great resource for those clients. I just love the idea that she takes people on tours to help them figure out what suburb is the best fit. I think that is such a cool thing. So if you have clients that you don't maybe have that experience in and you want to refer it to Kelly, or you have clients, you're in a different state and they move here and they're thinking about making that trip out west, Kelly would love the opportunity to chat with you. So definitely reach out to her. And the best way to do that is you can find her. She's all over online, but you can go to her website, Kelly Carlson. That's Kelly. Kelly, carlsonhomes.com. We will have a link to that in the show notes. Also, follow her on Instagram, Kelly Carlson Homes. You can see some of the cool non bragging stuff that she does on there about her projects that she works on and her interests. And also, I want to thank you, Kelly, on behalf of all of our listeners for coming on our show. This is really exciting for us. I love chatting with younger realtors who are really making a huge splash. That's not my opinion. That's the National Association of Realtors' opinion about you. So I am really grateful that you came on our show today, because you really are somebody that agents should be following, even just to see what Kelly's doing. So maybe you can get some good ideas and replicate some of that success for yourself. So follow her on Instagram, Kelly Carlson Homes. Go to her website. And if you think you might be a partner for Kelly, or guess what, guys, people move out of the suburbs too, and they move to Florida and Arizona and lots of places from Chicago. So maybe you're in one of those markets and you would say, hey, Kelly, I want to know when one of your clients is looking to move. Reach out to her. She would love the opportunity to chat and see if there's a fit there. So Kelly, on behalf of our audience, thank you so much for coming on behalf of Kelly and myself. The audience, we love you. We are so grateful that you stuck around to the end of the episode. Please tell a friend about our show. Think of one other realtor that could benefit. Send them a link, and also leave us a review. That really, really helps us with just being seen in the various podcast directories. So let us know what you think of the show. We take your suggestions very, very seriously to heart. We want to always make this show better for you. So tell a friend and leave us a review, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much, DJ. This was such a treat.